see here. Right. We still have, so let's wait a little bit to have more people coming in. We have, yes, 3, 5, okay. All right, let's. All right, I think we can start now. Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the Academia 2063 seminar series. My name is Ismail Fofana. I work for Academia 2063. I'm the Director of Capacity and Deployment. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Racine Lee from Academia 2. And Racine Lee is the Director of Data Management, Digital Product and Technology. He's going to be our presenter today. This is the fourth of our webinar series, the webinar series that Academia 2063 started some time ago, since the beginning of August. So far we had previously 3 seminar series. The first one that we organized on August 20th on COVID vulnerability hotspots. And then on August 27th, we had a food staple market dynamics. And then on September 3rd, we have the 3rd seminar series on trade in time of crisis. And this is our 4th webinar series. And it's going to be on food crop production forecasting in time of crisis and the role of remote sensing and artificial intelligence. Before we start the seminar, my colleagues, Nabu from the communication department will give us some practical modalities related to the webinar so that we have a smooth webinars. Nabu, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you, Ismail. Hello, Racine. Welcome to our participant. This is, as Ismail was saying, our 4th webinar. So we are having one each week on Thursdays. I would like to remind you that all mics are muted to allow the presenters to have a thorough and a clear explanation. At the end of his presentation, we will unmute the participant based on their ability to raise their hands. So there is a function that allows you to ask for your turn to ask a question. But in the meantime, we are encouraging you to use the chat box and just making sure that you are checking the option with all speakers and participants so that everyone could access your question and maybe avoid an overlap. We would like to remind you that the presentation that will be made today is following a publication within our COVID-19 series. So there is a bulletin that comes with Dr. Lee's presentation. I will share the link in the chat box, and we encourage you to go and visit the academia2063.org website where everything is there. I would also like to tell you that this presentation is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, please do so that you can receive the presentation and the video. Thank you very much and happy session.
All right, thank you, Nabu. Then once again, I think this the issue that we'll be discussing today will be is very timely because we know with the spread of COVID-19, the production, this year production may well be disrupted because of access to input on time for a producer to be able to use them, but also, with the lockdown or restriction that we had during this year, labor supply may be affected. So basically and beyond that, all those input and factors, agriculture production factors, element that are impacted by the pandemic will have certainly an impact on production. And also this is timely because of, access to data is also very challenging. It's challenging in normal days, but especially with pandemic is even more challenging. And then having, tools, remote sensing way of monitoring and evaluating what is coming out in terms of production. It's a valuable information that decision makers can use in order to to help them proactively intervene where and when it is necessary. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to our presenter, Racine Lee, and I wish to everybody a happy session. Over to you, Racine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Miniel. So good morning or good afternoon to everyone. My name is Racine Lee. I serve as Director of Data Management, Digital Products and Technology for Academia 2063. So as Dr. Fofana said, the COVID-19 outbreak is disrupting several areas of the global economy, and more specifically, Africa also, because of the number of cases and also restrictive measures that government has been taking to mitigate the propagation of the virus. So for monitoring and evaluation purposes, gathering information from the ground might be complicated. Therefore, any tool that we can use to sense what is happening from the ground for the agricultural sector might be useful. And furthermore, if it's possible also to be able to oversee the spatial but also temporal trends across the continent or countries, it will be very interesting for policymakers, as well as farmers also. So today, I would like to propose to present a work that is still ongoing, but we already have the first results in predicting food crop production during this 2020 season. And we know that for some countries and for some crops, they're still in the growing season. So therefore, having a forecast that can help to make what we used to say invisible visible, it can be a real asset. So here I would like also to acknowledge the participation of all the colleagues in this work, and more specifically, Mohamed Ahid, Babakar Sise, Mariam Jallo, and also Khadim Jah for their support in mining the data, pre-processing the data, satellite images, helping in building the model, and also drafting briefs and bulletins to be shared on the portal, the COVID-19 portal on academia2063.org. So for this presentation, we divided in 5 parts. The first one will be an introduction and the context in which we are positioning ourselves to create such a model. And then we will briefly discuss about the remote sensing products and third-party maps that we use as inputs to predict food crop forecast for African countries. Briefly also discuss machine learning predictive modeling framework. There it's more about the parameters that we considered for this model, more than technical aspects. And step number 4, section number 4 will be the first result that we obtain for DRC, Senegal, and Burkina Faso for specific crops each. And then a conclusion and the perspective of this work. As Dr. Fofana said, the pretext of this work actually is the COVID-19. And we know that the COVID-19 is like second to none in terms of impacts on the global economy as an outbreak. Even if official reports are saying that African people and governments and states are not that affected by the health crisis compared to other parts of the world. But the narrative when it comes to the economy is different. So if we look at the agricultural sector, actually the fear is the health crisis to morph into a food crisis due to disruption of the agriculture, of the food value chain. The reason for that basically is like the food protectionism, if we can put it that way, from exporting countries. Most of African countries are importing a lot of food. Also potential labor scarcity, and also the late reception and use of imported seeds and fertilizers for those who are importing them, among others, possible causes of the fear. But all of that can also bring the fear into life. So any means or tools that can be harnessed to predict and plan ahead is a real asset, and that's the focus of this work. Okay, all right. But even if the COVID-19 is a pretext for this work, I believe you are all aware that it's not the only shock that the African continent is experiencing right now. For example, recently from the news, we know that several countries in West Africa, but also in the Central Africa, the region, they are like experiencing heavy, heavy rain. For example, Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, and Senegal. But since this morning also, I heard we also have Ghana and also Burkina Faso. And what those rain actually can be seen as small signals of climate change, climate-related disruptions, even though in Niger, the most accepted reason for the Lake Niger to increase in terms of quantity in the water is due to the sand that is at the bottom, and then therefore reduce the depth of the lake. But the two main issues coming from those climate-related disruption can be like, we have two mains of them. It's not exhaustive, but at least we know also, we know heavy rain can be like harmful to crops, equally to drought. So if we do not know what will be the impact of those climate-related shocks, we won't be able also to predict or to see what will be the impact on the agricultural production. But also, I saw it in Senegal, like some, human settlements built up are flooded, and then that can potentially draw farmers' attention far from the cropping and to tackle more urgent matters. But also we can talk about the other different potential issues. So if you look at this, the climate-related shocks, well, the cropping calendar might not be relevant anymore, or even if it's still the case, if those threats are confirmed, maybe they might be soon not relevant anymore, and that can yield very low productivity or none in the agricultural sector. And that mainly because of the disalignment between the cropping calendars that we used to know and the new trends in coming from climate-related shocks. So, for example, a farmer might still respect to the calendar and still experience losses. Another shock that also we can cite is the demographic surge pressure on agriculture. I remember a report in 2015 from the UN saying that Africa, the projections for African population is like approximately 1.68 billion people by 2030, which is very close. We are not very far from 168 billion right now. But the general argument, the rationale of which is pushing us to would like to increase the agricultural productivity actually is derived usually from the fact that this alignment between production and population. But what we believe is that neither the agricultural productivity, the way that agriculture, we are not doubting agriculture to be able to provide that amount of food that is needed for the population, nor the ability of farmers to produce it actually is at stake. Even some arguments are saying the amount of food that is produced right now in the world is enough for its population, and maybe we should look at the way it is distributed across populations and communities. But what is critical here is how can we migrate from an only knowledge-based agriculture to a combination of knowledge-based but also data-driven approaches to try to improve and sustain that agricultural productivity that is needed. Actually, how we can move from agriculture era 1.0, 2.0 to all the way to 5.0, where it's a convergence of previous technological revolutions. And now we can use, for example, drones, we can use satellite images, we can use sensors on the ground to combine all of that and create a new type of knowledge. It might just confirm what we already know, but we believe also with new techniques like machine learning application, it can also discover new patterns within the data that can be helpful for farmers, but also policy makers. The keyword among, that is common to like those three shocks, even if COVID-19 is the pretext for this work, actually is uncertainty. We don't know what would be the real impact in a few months, in a few years, even how long the crisis will stay with us, the COVID-19. We don't know that. We don't know also what will be the impact of climate change in the agriculture. We cannot quantify it. We have small signals that can make us aware that something is happening. We still don't know also the demographic surge, how the impact, the real impact will be felt by the most vulnerable population and also others. So because of that uncertainty, there is a need actually to better anticipate at each decision level, from farmers to policy makers, but also to better have an overview of the spatial and temporal trends of the data patterns, and to be able to really strategize geographically at a very disaggregated level, but also to look back and try to predict what is like the most likely scenarios in the future. And that is possible actually, or at least can be possible with current technological advancement. So this is actually just to set up the context where the team actually tried to combine satellite, remote sensing, remotely sensed data through satellite images, and on the other hand, machine learning techniques. The first one actually right now is well democratized, and we can have access to high spatial and temporal resolution. But machine learning also techniques is being more and more used across the continent. Expertise is being built, and the supervised learning part of the machine learning can, has proven like very interesting capacities in learning historical data sets and to predict future outcomes. So the team combined those two aspects to predict food crop production for several in several African countries. So the aim is actually to expand it to other countries, and we are actively working on it. In terms of remote sensing products and third-party maps, so here what we try to do is to combine as much parameters as possible that can describe the mechanism of growing food. And to do that, we considered 4 maps, one by physical, 2 climatic, and 1 which is more about harvested areas. So we took into account the NDVI, which is the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, which is a well-known indicator to assess the healthy aspects of vegetation covers, the land surface temperature LST during the day. Those 2 maps actually are has been retrieved from MODIS satellite images and remote sensing products, and the rainfall from chirps. And then the harvested area actually is very interesting because it was provided by MapSpam, which is like a model, an allocation model built by IFPRI team, International Food Policy Research Institute. And it's those data, all of them are publicly available. So one aspect that I would like to talk about here is if you look at the NDVI, the LST day and the rainfall, you can see pixels with different colors with the legend, but also pixels that are white. Those pixels are like empty. I mean, even the pixel do not exist. Why? Because we create a crop mask. The harvested area is the location, the pixel's location of the most probable areas where a specific crop is grown. What I mean by that is that, if you look at the lower right map, those pixels actually are areas where we believe that millet has been grown, and the value associated with the pixels are the harvested areas in hectares. So if we replace each pixel that has a value with 1 and others with 0, actually we have a filter. So that's the filter that we built actually to filter all the other maps to really pinpoint the values of NDVI, LST, and rainfall only on areas where there is a high probability for millet to be grown. And even if we do that, we should still have other pixels on those maps. And those maps have been like taken out because of they are unreliable. The remote sensing products provided by MODIS came along with the with some layers of quality assurance and quality assessment of the pixels. So these are the parameters that we encountered as inputs for the model. Of course, other parameters can be added, for example, evapotranspiration. We are actively working on it, and also to improve the model with other sources. In terms of data pre-processing, the map that I presented on the previous slide are like the final product that we show. But there is a long process of preparing the data. I mean, first having access to them. Those data will come, for example, as not for example, but as tiles. Here, for the example of Senegal, 1 tile is enough to cover the entire country, including the Gambia also. But for a country like the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is a big country, we need 7 tiles that we need to combine and put together. And that process is like the mosaicing process, and we need to reproject them to be suitable for shapefiles or administrative borders. So we use like we did that for 2005, 10, and 17 as historical data that are available. And we cleaned them, as I explained earlier. And here for the averaging part, Actually, those data are available every 16 days. We only consider parameters values during the growing season, where they really matter for agriculture. And we annualize them in order to have one value per pixel for the year, because the production is available at an annual basis. So we need to match the temporal resolution. That's why we did that. And for the growing season and sowing season and harvesting period, we used the FAO crop calendar. After that, we need to flatten the map to transform it as a vector and combine it with other years. So actually at the end of the concatenate step, we will have one vector, for example, for NDVI, and we have all the data from 2005, 10, and 17 combined together as a vector. And then we stack all the parameters together. So at the end of this process, we should have a matrix with 5 columns. The first 4 are our inputs, and the last one is the production at the same spatial resolution. As an example, such process leads to like more than 40,000 scenarios, because each line is a historical scenario that will be used to train the model to understand the relationship between inputs and outputs to predict future outcomes. For the training process, as I said, without getting into the details, we used a supervised learning algorithm within the machine learning family, which is an artificial neural network that will mine the data to understand the relationship between inputs and the response variables. In our case here, it's a production. We used the 2 hidden layers of 50 neurons each. These are the some hyperparameters that are used to calibrate the model, and a dropout technique to avoid overfitting, because what we would like to avoid here is the model to learn too much from the data, so which is a good fitting process, in a way that if we give the model new data that are new, he won't be able to generalize well to give good predictions. So we would like actually to reduce the capacity of the model to learn too much from the data. So to do that, we are like turning on and off some neurons to reduce the model's capacity to learn too much. And the entire data and processing and modeling work has been handled by the team using Python scientific computing language and with in-house algorithm. And for the models that we tested on a tested data set, we obtained a mean square error of 0.08 on average. At the growing season onset, usually the maps of the input parameters are not available. So, on the other hand, predicting what would be the outcome of the agricultural season after the harvesting period is not that useful. So what we did here is to actually use the historical data of the model's inputs to predict them for 2020, and therefore use them as inputs for the production model. And we did that using a random forest regressor, which is a regression then. And so here you can see the patterns of our NDVI and millet for a random pixel, number 545. And then the green area is the empirical confidence interval. That is like built in with the random forest regressor. So these outcomes for NDVI, then LST and rainfall, and those 3 will be like used as inputs to predict what would happen in terms of production for the corresponding crop during the 2020 year. So the aim is like to keep doing it for each year in the future. As first results, so here I will present the case of the Democratic Republic of Congo and for yam. In terms of validation for the model, I mean, there are two levels of validation. The first one is an algorithmic one. And that one is actually to test the model with a test data set that the model never seen in the past. And then we predicted the model knowing the outcomes and we compared them. And the second one would be to go on the ground and gather the information to validate the model. But having them at such special resolution is a real challenge. So what we did actually is to compare the national predicted production for a specific crop and for a country with the data from the FAO portal. So for example, for DRC, the production in 2017 for DRC and yam was about 91,000 metric tons. And our model is predicting an increase of 2% above. So the value is still in a range of the historical reported data. In general, when we look at also the second map here, it's the ratio between the 2020 and the 2017 production. Why we used the 2017? Because it was the latest available production map available on MapSpan portal. And here there is an error. The ratio is not in metric ton. There is no unity for this one. But how we can analyze it is, in general, the 2020 prediction will be better than the 2017 from the model, because we see that where 2020 is greater than 2017 is from the light orange up all the way to the blue colors, and which is like practically everywhere in the country. But the highest increase should be expected on the north, west, and also the southern part of the country. And the area of Kinshasa, if you look at the first map, is like the bulk of the production. But if you look at the comparison between 2017 and 2020, we see that there's not that much change. So actually there we can, so there's a ISO production between the 2 years. We also look at Senegal for millet. Again, we checked the validation using FAO data, no, MapSpan this time in 2017. And the difference also is not that huge, even though there is a decrease of 12% of millet production across the country. And one of the advantage of using remote sensing and predict production at a pixel level is that you can actually pinpoint not only the region or the department or administrative borders where the sharpest decrease will likely to happen, but actually you can pinpoint at a pixel level. So here the pixel size in 10 kilometers. So it's at the scale of a community. And here for Senegal, for millet, most of the decline will be around the groundnuts basin with the orange color. And the increase will be more at the eastern and southern part of the country. The last example that we wanted to show here is Burkina Faso and sorghum. So here, if you look at the map, the first one again is the production, and the last one is the ratio between the production in 2020 and 2017. In general, on average, the production is expected to be better in 2020 compared to 2017. And the sharpest increase will be more in the center. So here by center, we mean in the middle of the map, the north, and the sharpest increase will be more about the east and the south. So these are 3 examples that we wanted to show. So as a conclusion, the use of remote sensing actually, I mean, the added value by using remote sensing product would be to go further down in terms of disaggregation. But the most interesting part is the combination of the remote sensing products from satellite images with a predictive modeling framework such as machine learning. And the combination of both actually is helping to more target where we should expect an increase or a decrease in terms of production. Therefore, maybe to have more targeted policies and also maybe assist or have a plan for the most vulnerable people around those areas. So our aim actually is to extend the work for other African countries. We're actively working on it. But we are not only considering the food crop production, we are also considering growing conditions maps to analyze them a bit in comparison between the 2 years, and also the shift in terms of yield. Because since the harvested area is available as well as the production, we can compute the yield for both years and see if there's any shift and then take appropriate actions if possible. Of course, we are also thinking on how we can keep improving the model, how we can add additional layers that are still relevant to the model. So, but though for that part, adding more features, we should pay more attention on what type of features we would like to add to the model. For example, they should be, for example, agricultural relevant. That's what I wanted to present here today. Again, thank you for the whole team, and more specifically these individuals that helped to provide those maps. And here, I will stop here with a map of millet production in 2020 with several countries that are trained together actually. So we are still trying to add more countries. So here it's the level of production at pixel level, and we can clearly see where are the hotspots or where the hotspot should be expected for the countries. So I will stop here. Thank you for your attention, and Mr. Chairman, over to you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Racine. I think this is a promising work, and also what Racine probably have not forgot to mention is there is internal collaboration effort that Academia 2063 is doing also to go beyond the productions aspect or the supply side. So we also developing economics models at the local level, regional level, local level, to see how this disruption is also affecting the livelihood of people. And then beyond, income and poverty, but also the nutrition aspect of the disruption is also being analyzed by the team. And then hopefully, those numbers will start to come out, and then we'll integrate them and then go beyond the production aspect. But what Racine and team is doing, it's really innovative, and it's with the time where it's difficult to collect information, especially in these moments, being able remotely to predict productions and use that information for decision making. It's an asset. It's really a valuable asset for decision makers. So without further ado, let's open the floor for discussions, comments, questions. And Nabu, do we have already questions that people have started writing on the chat? And then if you also have questions, you can raise your hand, and then I will give you the floor, and then you'll ask your question directly to Racine. So you have also the option of writing your question on the chat. Yeah,
absolutely. We do not have a question in the chat box. So since the number of participants is quite, for a lively session, we have activated all mics. And we are just reminding participants to indicate their name, title, and the organization they are part of.
All right, thank you, Nabu. We have a first question here from Olajide. Please, sir, go ahead. You have the floor.
All right, Ismail. Thank you, Dr. Ismail. It's my pleasure to be here. I must commend Racing and his team. This is a very commendable effort. I think in reality, Africa is overdue for
Hello, sir.
deployment of some of these innovative technology for agricultural productivity. In reality, hello, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, yes, go ahead, please.
Hello,
Go
can you
ahead.
hear me? Hello? Oh, wow.
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, sir, go ahead. We can hear you. There's a slight delay in, in the communication. Please go ahead.
Okay, yes, I was actually, my intervention dwells primarily on commending the team and academia, this very noble effort, the landscape. Yes, I do geoinformatics. I'm an agroclimatologist. By schedule, I belong to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and I equally teach geomatic engineering, doing some gamut of climate issues in a college there. I'm actually saying that we know that we are overdue for these technology. Using remote sensing and GIS, spatial technology generally to weigh in and actually doing things differently in agriculture. I don't have much to say, but just to commend you guys to have actually do this. I remember when we were doing that back in Sally, we did talk about doing a few things differently. I'm actually happy to see IPRI coming to academia to do this. But I want to quickly ask a question, and probably that will come in the next phase of the program, of the models. Do you, persons, have the same crop, multi-crop farmlands, the smallholders that have multiple cropping? That is, you have more than a single crop. It's not homogeneous. It's not monocropping. A multi-crop farmland. What were the possible outcomes of those simulations? Or there were no data matrix for such scenarios? That's the question. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, Racine, whether you you got all the question, the full question, because so you have been, in and off. So probably you may want to write down your question in the chat box so that we can answer it properly. But Racine,
Okay.
if you have something to say, please go ahead.
Yeah, I heard like smallholders, multi-cropping, and how the model can handle that. I don't know if it's a question, but if it's the case, actually the production map and the harvested areas are aggregated at a annual level. So if, for example, a farmer is using his or her land to have crop A at some point during the year, and then crop B at another period for the same year, the two maps affiliated with those crops will aggregate those values in two different maps, actually. So that's why when we take like the crop mask, sometimes you can have, the crop mask for two crops. When you overlay them, you will see the same pixel for two crops. this is typically, I mean, that is typically multi-cropping. But maybe to go more in details, I mean, we are also thinking about, I mean, putting together a project to identify crops from the signature, spectral signatures from satellite images. So basically what we are trying to put together is how from satellite images with several layers of spectral bands, we can pinpoint at a very high spatial resolution that this is, for example, corn, or this is, for example, maize or rice. If we build that tool, which is like crop type classification, it will be easier actually to monitor the crop rotation on specific lands. Yes, Dr. Fofana.
Yeah, thank you, Racine. Yes, any questions, comments from audience? I'm still seeing, yes, Julie, please go ahead. I'm still seeing your hand up. Yes, go ahead, Julie.
Hi, thanks Ismail, and thanks Racine for the presentation. Congratulations to you and your team on the work. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the process for predicting the inputs with the regression, the NDVI and the others. What variables are those predictions based on? Is it only the past values, or is there new information brought into that too? Thanks.
Okay. Hey, Julie, thanks. Yes, for the inputs, actually, we are just considering historical data. We're not adding any additional inputs to predict them. And the rationale to do that is actually the production model is taking into account 4 parameters: NDVI, land surface temperature, rainfall, and harvested areas. For NDVI, rainfall, and land surface temperature, we have the historical data, but we don't have the new maps at the growing season onset for a specific crop and country. And we do not want to wait after the harvesting period to build the model or during the growing season. So we just isolate historical data sets from each of those parameters and use the random forest regression to estimate what would happen for the next season, 2020. And then the outcomes of those predictions are used as inputs for the production model. So it's just historical data value of the same parameter.
Thank you, Racine. More questions, comments from the audience? Racine, can you tell us a little bit how you are planning to improve the resolution of your at the pixel level? Because right now you are at 10 kilometers. 1 pixel is represent 10 kilometers. So can we go down to and have, you know, lower resolutions or higher resolutions, let's say, and then to be able, you know, to have a better local predictions?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you for the question. It's very interesting. Actually, it's true. The pixel size of the maps that we have right now are like squares of 10 by 10 kilometers, which is still huge for agricultural classic, farm size. So what we want to do in the very near future is actually to go further down, like to 30 meters all the way to 20. And that will be due at the same time we are trying to build the crop type classification. So here, if you look at the project, we used remote sensing products. So actually it's already the combination of several bands. For example, NDVI is like near infrared and red that we combine to have the NDVI. But for what we want to do, the crop type classification, we don't want to combine any spectral band. We would like to take them as they are in order to exploit the other information that are embedded in other bands. And once we have that crop type classification, we'll be able to have actually estimation prediction of productions at 900 meters square on the ground, which is reasonable in terms of farm size. We initially wanted to go with Sentinel-2, but because of building those maps are very time-consuming process, and we already have access to, for example, protected areas at 30 meters. We have water bodies, surface water bodies, permanent and seasonal at 30 meters. We have forest regions at 30 meters. We also have agricultural lands in 2015 at 30 meters. So 30 meters will be faster to generate those maps and making it available to the community. So that would be the next step to improve the model using Landsat 8 for the 30 meter. Ben.
All right. Thank you, Racine. Thank you very much. Very interesting. So any questions, comments from the audience? I still have, yes, we have Julie. Julie, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I guess I have a follow-up on my other question. Thank you. I'm wondering if the yield predictions from your model could be considered a prediction of production in the absence of COVID, if it's based on the historical data, which then could be compared with the actual production once that data is available. Is that correct? Or are some of the input data used in your model the actual 2020 values, or is it all based on historical prediction? In which case, could it be considered a counterfactual?
Yeah. That's a very nice question. Actually, at the beginning, we wanted to compare the predictions from a year without COVID-19 officially and a year where we know there is COVID-19. But the historical data won't be predicted. It would be like real data. And at the same time, if you look at the latest available map of production that are closer to 2020 is the 2017, which is a year where there is no official report of COVID-19. So actually it's a combination of both. It's a map in 2017 where we know there is no official report on COVID-19. And at the same time, it's the latest available for the way we build the model. And that's what we use actually to compare with prediction in 2020. I don't know if it answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Racine. Any questions, comments from the audience? A quick one, Racine, before we have, yes, we have, sir, please go ahead. Olajide, yes. You have the floor, sir. Please, sir, Olajide, please, you have the floor. Go ahead. We can't hear him, Racine. Before we have him come, can you tell us a little bit, what is the plan? I know, as you presented, input data that you are using is temperature, rainfall, NDVI, maybe something else. Is there any plan to extend the input data and then to, okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Ismail, thank you very much.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, it's equally, my intervention is a follow-up to my earlier question. We talked about the signature data that we're using. I think, yes, the explanation you gave is very valid. Of course, there's still is still metamorphosing into something that will give us a complete process and something very reliable. But I'm still a little bit bothered the historical data you're using, because we know in Africa, like it's the case here in Nigeria where I am, data integrity, it's a very, very critical and very contestable issue. How do you ascertain the integrity of the historical data that you're using to actually get this
Okay.
procedure done? The reliability of the historical data.
All right, thanks, yeah, Racine, please go ahead.
Yeah, I understand. The question is how do we assess the accuracy of the historical data? For the since it's remote sensing products, those products will have accuracy flags layers.
Yes.
So we rely on the accuracy flags of those layers to take out any pixel that is flagged as unreliable. Because even those maps actually are based on predictions with validation on the ground. They use machine learning to produce those maps also. So what is interesting is having the quality assessment, the quality layer of those pixels allows us to take out any pixel that they believe is not accurate enough based on the comparison of their predictions and the data they have from the ground. For example, if you look at the Hansen forest change, actually they have the whole map of the continent with exactly some areas where they went to validate the data and assess what is the accuracy of the model as a global tool, but also the accuracy of the maps and provide it as a layer on to end users. So we rely on those layers actually. But as a perspective, what we are planning to do or with the projects we are trying to create is actually to work with national statistic bureaus in countries, extract the spectral bands and work with them actually to validate our labels with them from the ground. That will help us actually to know what would be the accuracy of what we did with the country. And by providing such a map, we can also provide the quality assessment of each pixels, and then end users can know also what are the pixels where we are confident ourselves because we went all the way through the validation process with the country, and also pixels where we saw that it's not that reliable, and we're going to experience that obviously. All pixels cannot be very reliable. Sorry.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Racine. Still, I had a question that I was asking. Do you want to answer that one? I mean, regarding the input data, if any plan to expand that input data, and then how do you think if you expand it will affect the predictions that you are making with using the machine learning?
Okay.
Over to you.
So in terms of layers, there is, for example, the evapotranspiration that we know is also agricultural relevant. But we would like also to add a layer from the crop type classification that will help us actually to pinpoint a crop, a specific crop, without having a generalization in the year. So the crop rotation. And the second map also that would be interesting to add here is the soil type layer, which can also be helpful to know those exist with like the level of nitrogen in the ground. and also the soil classification. So if we can overlay all of that, we expect the model to be more realistic and be closer to the reality in growing food. But I cannot assess if it improved the accuracy of the model, because every day we keep seeing like some from the literature, some models that are showing that, yeah, the more you add layers, the more you add data in depth or width, the model will be more accurate. Actually, other models, work from the literature is showing that more data can be harmful to the model itself. So it's a iterative work where we need to assess it. And at this moment, I cannot tell that it will be more accurate, but at least we know it will be more close to what we believe is important for growing food.
All right, thanks, Racine. Thank you very much for that. Any other comments and questions? I would like to seize the opportunity to acknowledge the attendance of Mr. Victor Vixon Kube. I hope that I pronounce it right. Our Academia 2063 board member, and sir, welcome to our webinar series. Nabu, is it possible to unmute Mr. Vixon to give him the floor?
We have promoted Mr. Vixon Kube to speaker. So yes, I think he's able to talk now.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Please,
okay,
sir, tell me if you need any assistance in the chat box if this is not effective.
Okay, all right. So you're welcome anytime. All right, Racine, any other comments here, questions from the audience? Okay, all right. If there is no more, yes, we have, yes, still, sir, go ahead. Olaide, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Ismail. I want to quickly ask a question. In the data acquisition and link both the satellite imagery and the historical data, if there's any observed timeline relating to the intervals, because we know we can do acquisition of the data in season, we can do it per season. So I wouldn't know what timeline between what's it called, the multiple acquisition over time for each cropping season. If you can throw light on what is the time range, if they do in season and off season within the period of the data acquisition and analysis. If you can weigh in on that. Listen, did you get me?
The question is the time, what is the temporal resolution of the data acquisition?
Yeah, the data, yes.
Yeah.
Time period, yeah.
Okay. What is the frequency we get access to those inputs, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So for this work, it's every 16 days.
Okay.
So every 16 days, we have those maps. But you can go up to 8 days, actually. And that's also is in the pipeline.
Okay. Were they all in season you do post season?
Oh, the precision.
Within the 16 days this season. Okay. All right.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. But also, Racine, I think the way forward with the other sources that you are planning to use, you may have a different time frequency. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. We will have a different time frequency. For example, for soil type, we won't have a soil type every 16 days. It will be the same for probably for years. So therefore, we will use it as a mask, actually. So for each pixel, we will say, okay, this pixel is affiliated with this type of soil. And for the evapotranspiration, actually, is also every 16 days. So it won't be a problem for the other maps. Yeah.
Was referring more with the new techniques that you're using to, have a higher resolution in terms of pixels. They're having 5 days, I think, or something like that in terms of frequency.
Oh, okay, I see now. Okay, so the new methodology, which is the next step of this work, after we add the several layers, additional layers that we like to add to this one, is to use more precise, high spatial resolution with Landsat 8, which is 30 meters, and then every 16 days also. And 30 meters would mean that one pixel on those maps will be a square of 900 meters squares on the ground. We are also considering Sentinel-2, but now our focus is more on Landsat 8, which is 30 meters. Landsat Sentinel-2 will be at 20 meters for some bands. So those at 10 will be aggregated to be 20. And therefore, for each pixel on the map will correspond on the ground with a square of 400 meters square. But now the way for to move forward will be the 900 meters square at 16 days.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Racine. If there is any more comments and questions for Racine, I think we are at the end of our meeting. Before ending the meeting, let me give the floor to Nabu. If there is any information that you want to share at this stage, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Ismail, and congratulations to Racine. Thank you to all our attendees. I would just like to remind you that this material will be shared with you. In order to receive it, you just have to register to our newsletter. So this can be accessed via our website, so academia2063.org. And we will also encourage you to visit our COVID-19 web portal where all our resources and findings are available. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabu. Racine, any last words?
Oh, just thank you everyone for attending and for the questions, and see you next Thursday.
All right, thank you, Racine. So our next webinar will be on September 17th, and we'll be discussing the nutrition effect of rising prices among poor and vulnerable. So thank you for your time, and see you soon.
All right, thank you.